Welcome to Texas. Welcome to Texas, Donald Trump, king of entrepreneurs. Welcome to Texas, Donald Trump, the man who epitomizes the American dream. Welcome to Texas, Donald Trump, a great family man who was raised by wonderful parents, has wonderful children, and says his most important time in his life is with his family. Welcome to Donald Trump, a guy who wrote a book called Never Give Up, which epitomizes what I want to be. We're here tonight to celebrate the American dream, and we're here to celebrate American exceptionalism with no apologies. I can't think of anyone better who speaks more boldly, more unabashedly, more unashamed than Mr. Trump. We are thrilled to have Donald Trump here. Let's have a great big standing ovation for Donald Trump. Books that your father would send you inspirational notes and motivational sayings. What effect did that have on you as you grew up?
Well, my father had a great effect on me. A lot of reasons, and especially since there's so many young people that I love, and veterans. I love you veterans, all these veterans. Best people are veterans. I think I like the veterans even more than the young people. The young people are all right, but you know, they're my competition. Don't forget the veterans already. They're much braver than both of us, okay? That I can tell you. But with my father, I learned something very interesting. He loved life, and he always worked. He was a worker, like you. He was a worker. And I'd sit, it wasn't so much the notes, I'd sit at his side when I was a little kid playing with blocks, and I'd hear him talking on the phone, blah, blah, blah. And I mean, for him, a big day would be on a Sunday, late in the afternoon, going to the beach and sitting in the sand at a public beach, like a Jones Beach, for an hour or two, and back to work. He loved to work, and he was happy. And I see so many people now, they don't like to work. They don't get the job done. You look at something, and Jim and I were talking about it before, you look at, as an example, you look at Benghazi, you look at IRS, you look at Hillary emails, you look at the new scandal with her. They talk and talk for like 2 days, to the end of it, nothing ever happens. They're all talk, they're no action. They'll stand up here perhaps on the stage and they'll walk from side to side and they'll talk about the moon and the sun and this, all this. And nothing happens. So I'm tired of politicians. I do love dealing with politicians though, because if you can't make a good deal with a politician, you shouldn't be in business. Winston Churchill was a great orator. And you know, Winston Churchill had a major stuttering problem. When he was young, he could hardly speak. He had a very, very major, but he became a great orator. Do you think when Winston Churchill uttered those words, he did it with more elegance than Mattress Mack? I don't think so. I liked him better. But it's true, never give up. I mean, never, ever give up. And I tell that to people. You know, I have a lot of friends where they ask me to speak at big events on success and different things. And I have a lot of friends where they have children and they'd like to, you know, would I take the children out to lunch? I really love doing this, but it's okay. And they ask me about, you know, success and what should I do? And I tell them lots of things, love what you do, handle pressure, a lot of different things. But one of the things I've seen over business, Jim, and you've seen it many, many times, is that the people that don't give up are really the people overall that become the most successful. You see a little bit of The Apprentice, you know, like Joan Rivers, okay? She was a terrific woman. I saw her a day before she died. She was unbelievable. That just tells you always get a good doctor, very important. I mean, I saw her a day before she died. I said, she's unbelievable. She's never gonna die. She was like 83, 84. She won The Apprentice at 76 years old. She had more energy. I had athletes. I had one guy hits a baseball 500 feet. I had another guy, football player, and MMA guys, they were exhausted. And Joan, oh, But I see it in life. The people, I went to the Wharton School of Finance and I was with some of the smartest people. And in terms of finance, like the smartest, it's probably the best business school in the world. I think it is. And a lot of the people that went there are heading up big companies. But I've known them all. And the smartest ones aren't necessarily the ones that became the most successful. It was the ones that never ever gave up. They just wouldn't take no for an answer. And they're the biggest people, and they're leading the biggest companies and all of them. They're the most successful entrepreneurs. So I see it, and I really say this for everybody, but I say it especially to the young people in the audience, that just never give up. Get something you want to do, get something you love, but never ever quit or give up. So important. Okay? Cutting the yen, it was almost impossible for Caterpillar to compete. And you have the same problem with furniture. There's no question about it. And I buy a lot of product from China. I have no choice. I mean, look, I could pay more or something. And a lot of times you buy things, like people say, well, you therefore get it cheaper. We saw our product is better. People don't realize that. But we could also buy less. I have a son. I buy him so many toys. I'd rather pay more money and buy him half. He'd be totally satisfied. But it is very hard to compete with China and some of these countries that manipulate, because they are masters at the game, and they know that our leaders don't have it. They don't have it. They don't have a clue.
Okay, Ronald Reagan said that government is not the solution, government is the problem. Would you tell us about the famous Woolman ice rink in Central Park that you did?
Well, you probably all heard of the Woolman rink in Central Park. So it was under construction for 8 years. I have a daughter, Ivanka, who wants to go ice skating. Daddy, I want to go ice skating. And this is at Central Park. And I pass it, and I see 100 men sitting down all day long. They take 7 lunch breaks. They didn't work. Their work was 1 lunch break, and the rest of the time they did nothing. And they'd sit down for 8 years. So I went to our mayor, Ed Koch, who I wasn't a big fan of. And I said, you know what? I'd love to go over and take over that rink. Nobody's working on it. And he didn't want me to do it because he didn't want to be shown up. I said, this has nothing to do with being shown up. So I went to the editorial board of the New York Times and the Daily News at the time. I said, I want to fix this rink. Then I said, I will do it for less than $2 million. Now they had spent $22 million. And it was wasted. They didn't know what they were doing. They were using the wrong everything. Everything. It was hard. They were using Freon. Interesting, sir. They were using Freon. Miles and miles, this is a very big rink, miles and miles of copper tubing. And you have to know about New York. It happens less in Texas. But every night people would come in, vandals, and they'd steal the copper. So they keep stealing. So they put more. Millions and millions of dollars worth of copper. So they'd put it down, they'd go home, people would steal it, next day they start on it. This went on for years. And the problem is that if you have a tiny little pinhole, it was Freon, that's gas. If you have a tiny little, it was an amazing story. If you have a tiny little pinhole in the Freon, it would leak and it would be no good, ruin the whole ring. A little hole like this would ruin this whole massive ring. So what happened is I said, I gotta take it. So I took it over. Finally, Koch had no choice. He had to give it because it was like a scandal. It was a scandal nationwide. It was on incompetence. And I ended up taking it over. And I said, who's the engineer for the ring? Because it's not working. And they actually poured it. You have to see this. They poured it where one side of the concrete was this side, and the other side was this side. So when they poured the water, all the water went to one side. So one water was like 1.5 feet thick, the other one was 1/4 inch. The 1/4 inch was better because you could at least, freeze it. So it was a disaster. So I said, who's the engineer? Well, sir, he comes from Miami Beach. Miami Beach? It's a nice one. It's true, Jim. So my first decision, I said, you know what? I have a friend that went to college. He works for the Montreal Canadiens. Maybe I should call him. So I called him up. I said, Jimmy, could you do me a favor? I have this ice skating rink in Central Park. They have never been able to make ice. They fix it and they this. He said, what system are you using? I don't know. I think Freon. Freon? You can't do that because if you get, okay. So he comes down. He looks at me. He says, no. Now, you want to use brine. Now, brine, you know what brine is? It's water with salt in it. So the salt doesn't let the water freeze. So it's very cold water, and you use rubber hose, a lot of it. So I said, boy, that makes a lot of sense. Brine. So we put down the rubber hose, nobody stole. First of all, I had great security. That guy was so tough. So tough, they'd look at him and they'd say, weak system. You understand? These guys were killers. But I didn't need them, because nobody wants rubber hose. They want copper, they don't want rubber. So I put up miles of rubber hose, every 4 inches, ba, ba, ba. It was done quickly. Then I had concrete struts, because you want to pour a continuous slab. You want it to be all the real estate guys, the construction guys are. So I had concrete mixers, cement mixers, lined up to Harlem, because I wanted one contiguous. I poured it. In one day, it was a 24-hour pour. The most beautiful thing you've ever seen. Perfectly lasered, everything perfect. The brine, put the water on it, turned the thing, voila, ice. And I did it for $1.6 million. They had already spent $22 million. And I will tell you, of the 22, most of the work I had to do for the 1.6 was demolition. My biggest cost was demolition. I had to take everything out. Because someone said, oh, they'll give you a head start. They didn't give me a head start. I had to take everything out. And that's a case study that's, and I did it in 3 months, by the way, done in 3 months. So everybody But that's a little bit the free enterprise system. It's the way he runs a store. It's the way other people run other things. It's a little bit the free enterprise system, and it's a great system. If we release it, if we let it be great again, it's a great system. It's really fantastic. Thank you. Or if I'm a German, or if I'm a person we do business with, why, I don't think it's a very nice term. We're exceptional. You're not. First of all, Germany's eating our lunch. So they say, why are you exceptional? We're doing a lot better than you. I never liked the term. And perhaps that's because I don't have a very big ego and I don't need terms like that. But honestly, when you're doing business, I watch Obama and everyone's always say American exceptional, so I don't like the term. Because we do, first of all, I want to take everything back from the world that we've given them. We've given them so much. On top of taking it back, I don't want to say we're exceptional. We're more exceptional. Essentially, you're saying we're more outstanding than you. By the way, you've been eating our lunch for the last 20 years, but we're more exceptional than you. I don't like the term. I never liked it. When I see these politicians go, the American exceptionalism, and we're dying. We owe $18 trillion in debt. I'd like to make us exceptional, and I'd like to talk later instead of now. Does that make any sense? Yeah. Because I think you're insulting the world. And Jim, if you're German, or if you're from Japan, or you're from China, you don't want to have people saying that. I never like the expression. And I see a lot of good patriots get up and talk about America. You can think it, but I don't think we should say it. We may have a chance to say it in the not too distant future, but even then I wouldn't say it. Because when I take back the jobs, and when I take back all that money, and we get all that stuff, I don't want to rub it in. Let's not rub it in. Let's not rub it in. But I never liked that term. Okay.
Final question. What do we do to take the country back and erase the $18 trillion deficit?
Well, a lot of what I've said. I would tell China that China's the biggest abuser. China has abused us more. And by the way, we have so many vets here. I have to tell you, the vets have been mistreated. We would take care of the vets, and we would take care of them. I'm so glad we looked at the show. Our vets are much braver than I am. I'm brave financially, but I will tell you, they're much braver than I am, and they're great. They're amazing people, and I know so many of them. And two things. I was very much responsible for the building of the Vietnam Memorial in Lower Manhattan, and a group of people. And I'm very proud. And every time I'm on the street, which isn't that often, but every time I'm on the street, vets say, thank you, Mr. Trump. Vietnam vets say, and even others, but Vietnam vets say thank you. And it's down in Lower Manhattan by the East River, and it's beautiful. And it's the Vietnam Veterans Memorial where I was very responsible, along with a group of other people, for getting that built. The other thing I did that I'm very proud of, in 1995, we had a Veterans Day parade in New York, and it wasn't down Fifth Avenue, which is the prime line. It was on Riverside Drive, which is not prime. There were no people. And they had the veterans walking proudly, and there were no people. And it was a huge scandalous story. Some of you remember it. Does anybody remember that? It was a disaster. And they were walking down, and it was a big story that the vets were walking down Riverside Drive, no people, and there was nobody watching. And it was a scandal. And a group came to me and they said, would you think we could have a big parade? I said, yeah. First of all, we have to move it. Can't have a big parade on Riverside Drive. We gotta move it to Fifth Avenue. And I led a group, and I was the one that really, I think I was even like the Grand Marshal. It's a long time, 1995, so it would be 1996, the year after. And we had a parade, the likes of which you've never seen. And a lot of people say it was the biggest parade in the history of New York. Let's say, because you have reporters here, and political reporters are very dishonest, very, very dishonest. So if I say it's the biggest, they'll say, Mr. Trump lied, he said it was the biggest. So I said it was one of the biggest, but I think it was the biggest, but it was one of the biggest parades in the history of the city of New York. Hundreds of thousands of people lined Fifth Avenue. The year after, they had nobody. This was the year after they had this horrible, nobody. Down Fifth Avenue, I think it was 1996, and I was so proud of that. It was an amazing day for the veterans, and it really did spell something very special. But as far as the country is concerned, we can take it back, and we will take it back. But we have to take it back with intelligence and toughness, But intelligence is a very important word. You know, I was interviewed by Bill O'Reilly, and I was telling him about ISIS and what to do. But you know, one of the things with ISIS, and I have to say this, so we have a problem. I was never a big fan of the Iraq thing because I always said, what's going to happen when we leave? I said, Iran's going to take it over, and I've been right. And I said, keep the oil. You remember? I said, well, look, we spent $2 trillion in Iraq. We spent all of this money. We lost thousands of lives, and we have wounded warriors all over the place. I love the wounded. They're incredible. These beautiful, but they have they're missing arms and legs, and I spend a lot helping them. They're incredible. But they got it for that. And I said, remember I said, keep the oil. People said, what a horrible statement. What a horrible statement. Remember, they were all going, do you know? They said, that's a sovereign country. How dare you? You know where's the oil now? ISIS. ISIS is. And you know who else has the Iran? And you know Iran is going to take over Iraq. They're already fighting their battles. They're going to take over Iraq. And they treat us terribly. They're taking over Iraq. So we spend trillions, we spend lives, everything. And we don't have it. So I say this. When people ask me about ISIS, I know exactly what to do. Believe me. But you know what I hate? I'm a big fan of General Douglas MacArthur. I'm a big fan of General George Patton. These guys were generals. Today we have generals. And when they asked me, what would you do with ISIS? So I see the president saying, a couple of months ago, we are going to attack in 2 weeks. Remember this? To Queen. We're going to attack in 2 weeks. We're going to drop this. And I actually thought it was a camouflage. I thought he was going to do the opposite. It turned out to be exactly true. And the general's saying exactly what we're going to do, and then we're going to send troops, and we're going to blah. I said to myself, can you imagine the great General Douglas MacArthur and George Patton? They're spinning in their grave. So I would usually answer that question. If somebody, because we got to do a big number of us, because of the nuclear stuff, we can't let it. You know, without that, I feel much different. I'd like to rebuild the country. We will rebuild the infrastructure of the country. Who can do that better than Trump, okay? You know, Jim, in China, they're building bridges and airports and roadways. You go to Qatar, you go to Dubai, I'm doing big jobs in Dubai. They have an airport that's the most incredible thing you've ever seen. Then we come home to LaGuardia, it's like a third world country. It's like a third world country, it's crazy. We have to rebuild our infrastructure. But we can't broadcast to the enemy. And I say to this, if I run, and I get the biggest crowds, look at this crowd. If you had some of these clowns coming up here, these politicians, you'd have 14 people in the audience. And he wouldn't be here either, he'd be home watching television. But we get big crowds, and you know, or he'd be at the store working, probably that's wrong. But I said, you know, if I run, and if I win, I don't want to really be talking about what I'm going to be doing. I don't want them to know. They say, would you put boots on the ground? I don't want to tell them. Let them worry about it. The country needs real leadership. We haven't had it for a long time.
Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, an American patriot, a great American businessman, a great American entrepreneur, and a great philanthropist, Donald Trump. Thank you, Mr. Trump.
Am I going to shake his hand?
Please, 1 second. 1 second.
You need to run for president. Do it.
Yes. Yeah.
Do it.
Watch.
Do it.
Watch.
Have a
Good
safe
job.
travel
Way to
home.
go.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Wow, he's amazing.